In today's video, I'm going to dive in a bit more about fawning and speak to you about how it feels, how to begin interrupting it, and how to deal with the ruptures and conflicts that might occur when you begin to be more honest. If you didn't see my last video, click on the link below so you can see part one. Welcome to the Holistic Life Navigation channel. I'm your host, Luis Mujica. I'm a somatic educator and nutritionist, and I'm here to explore every aspect of life through the lens of somatic psychology, nutrition, and philosophy. Let's dive in. So I want to remind you that the whole purpose of fawning is to secure your attachments so you can avoid conflict or even harm. So if we go back to an example I used in part one, it's pretty common when someone is abducted or held hostage or even being assaulted or sexually assaulted to pretend you're enjoying the person or the situation. This is the fawning response. The body reflexively starts to appease, possibly even compliment, but people please the individual in front of you who's essentially has your life in their hands. So if you're able to calm the nervous system down of the individual who's being aggressive or violent toward you, chances are you can coerce them out of abusing you, or they'll settle down enough and you're able to run away and escape or even fight them off in some cases. Why do we fawn with the cashier? The cashier at the store is not going to hurt us. Our life is not in their hands. However, our animal body has historical evidence that when we people please, we avoid conflict. And for a lot of people, conflict feels like threat. Conflict actually feels like violence or harm or like something abusive or dangerous is about to happen. And this is interestingly enough true for people who have experienced actual abuse and people who haven't. There's a lot of reasons. These bodies have kind of an ancestral memory that if we aren't in relationship, we probably won't survive on our own in nature in the wild. So we have this inherent desire to secure our attachment so we have community, so we have protection and love and our basic needs, as well as our attachment needs met. That's one reason. Another reason is if you have experienced abuse, if you have experienced developmental trauma that was relational with other people, if you have experienced threat or violence or aggression, your body realized when I people pleased, I was able to navigate that with greater ease and even either reduce or avoid the pain and violence and hurt altogether. So your body decides, well, this is what I must do relationally moving forward to avoid conflict. So it really all comes down to creating a capacity or tending to your capacity to be able to endure and experience conflict, disagreements, and being disliked. The root of the fawning mechanism comes from avoiding conflict, avoiding being disliked, coercing or people pleasing out of the ability to dislike you or even disagree with you. If you're not being disagreed with or disagreeing with others, if you're not being disliked and you're not experiencing conflict, you're kind of just floating along in your relationships. And that sounds lovely, but because there's so much repression due to the fawning response, there's a lot of internal aggression, violence, rage, overwhelm, exhaustion, fatigue, you name it, that can come from repressing how you feel for long periods of time. Nearly everyone I ever worked with in private practice who fawned consistently, these people had extreme rage that was just hanging out there ready to come up. And that rage was physiological. It caused illness. It changed their biochemistry, created inflammation, it changed their eating habits, the shows they watched. So much stress and tension and overwhelm. Interestingly enough, a lot of inflammation of the thyroid. I worked with lots of people that had autoimmune disorders that affected their thyroid, which of course is right here. In this area, it can constrict and get quite inflamed and imbalanced when you are consistently repressing or self-censoring what you want to speak, your boundaries, your needs, your true expression. And when you're stuck in a fawning response, this place is often repressed and shut down. So there's kind of two steps I'm going to take you through today around being with the conflict and even embodying and interrupting the fawning response. And we're going to start with the latter because it's actually easier than being with conflict. That's the hard work. Being with your fawning response, witnessing it and embodying it means feeling the part of you that constricts socially. the part of you that constricts relationally. You're with your friend having tea, and you feel this shutdown in your stomach. You feel this shrugging, this pulling up in your shoulders, and this constriction here, a tension in your jaw or your forehead. You feel parts of you that are completely stressed out, even though you're saying, moving, doing, and acting gestures, words, expressions that seem like you're having a really great time. So you might be saying to your friend, "Oh my God, that's so funny." And simultaneously, your stomach is just contorted and overwhelmed and feeling very uneasy and really unpleasant. This is one of the ways you can start embodying your fawn mechanism. Noticing, where do I feel stress that's incongruent with how I'm expressing? I'm smiling, I'm nodding, I'm complimenting, I'm laughing, I'm performing, yet there's a part of me under a lot of stress with you. There's a part of me that's very overwhelmed, and usually part of that overwhelm is fear. I'm afraid if I express this part, you'll leave, you'll hate me, some horrible thing will occur. So the first thing to notice when you think of someone you might fawn with is to start tracking your body for constriction. What parts of me are constricting? These are the parts that are going to a freeze response, that are repressing against themselves to not express outward to this individual. Because remember, fawn is a hybrid. One part of you constricts and freezes to repress expression and boundaries and truth, and the other part of you performs. So the performance is incongruent with the repressed part. And that's what makes it fawning. So if you ever ask yourself, what's the difference between being nice and kind and generous and complimenting? That's it. So when that's happening, I want you to try this. Take your hand and put it over the place that's constricted. Just to know it's there, just to know you're touching it, just so that constricted place has a little bit of tending from you. And then, regardless of the situation, the person, what's happening, I just want you to notice your feet. And if these were your feet, whether they're in shoes or you're barefoot, I want you to start wiggling your toes and taking a breath into those toes as you wiggle them. And then moving your heels up and down like this, coming up on your toes, down on your heels, whether it's just a little bit or a lot, and breathing while you do that. Moving your feet, usually the part of your body furthest away from your social engagement center, your face, right? Your hands when you're talking and fawning and pretending you're really having a blast. Those feet are the furthest thing from the people who you were fawning with. They're not noticing your feet, especially if they're under a table, under a Zoom screen, or under your in shoes, hidden in shoes. So go to your feet and let your feet be these really expressive parts, and that's going to start interrupting the freeze response. That's going to start invoking and honoring your body's boundary, which is often flight. If you go to the grocery store and you're speaking to somebody who you don't want to talk to, and they're coming up to you and they're really excited to share something and you just don't want to hear it, your flight response would be the natural choice. It would emerge and your body would move you away from that person, or you would avoid them and walk away altogether. Or you'd say, "Sorry, can't talk, I'm in a hurry." Your flight response would negotiate the boundary, the space between you and the individual overwhelming you, even the individual that could be inappropriate or breaking your boundaries. So moving the toes, moving the feet up and down, you're engaging your body's flight, which awakens it out of that freeze that will cause you to stay still and reflexively smile and talk to the person as if you're enjoying it. So just start there. It's the simplest beginning, and it will help your body stay awake and alive while you fawn. Even if you keep fawning, even if you keep people pleasing, you'll at least be embodying it. You'll be witnessing it. You'll be conscious of it. So you won't buy into the idea that you're actually enjoying yourself. You'll be witnessing yourself fawning and saying, "Wow, there I am smiling when I don't mean to. There's my body like laughing and my hips moving towards somebody and my heart all open as if I care." You'll at least be conscious of it. And that's the first step, because if you're not conscious of your fawning, there's nothing for you to be in response to. There's nothing for you to witness. There's nothing for you to hold. It's just a concept out there versus a state and experience in here. Hey, my friends. I created a space that is affordable, accessible, and anyone is allowed to join anytime, and it's called the Library Membership. The Library Membership is an online private platform that hosts dozens of my webinars, my somatic practices, private mini lectures, and movement practices. There's also a monthly sound healing, and you'll be invited to a weekly Tuesday live mini practice with me and other participants. You'll also be invited to be a live audience member in our monthly HLN team podcast recordings, where you'll take place in the Q&A that happens off air after the episode is filmed. For more information on this membership, click on the link below or go to holisticlifenavigation.com and click on membership and then library. You can join right now and you can cancel or pause your subscription at any time. I look forward to seeing you in there. Now for the really difficult part, being with conflict. I'm going to teach you a very simple philosophy called overcouplings. Overcouplings is it's a philosophy, but it's also a term in somatic experiencing that expresses and explains how we associate one thing with another, and almost in a guarantee. So, for instance, let's say someone disagrees with me. They just disagree with what I say. Them disagreeing with me feels in my body like when I was bullied in 5th grade. So my body has overcoupled someone disagreeing with me with potentially being hurt and bullied. Those two things live together. Uncoupling is when they separate. Oh, I feel the memory, the experience of being bullied, horrible, and I feel the current experience of them disagreeing with me, and they're not the same thing, they're separate. Until we get to this stage, when we're living in this stage, until we get to this stage, we can't be okay with conflict because everything, every disagreement, every disappointment, every dislike, every conflict with someone feels like something violent or oppressive or harmful because it reminds us of a past relational trauma or rupture that was traumatic or extremely stressful and overwhelming, or in some cases even threatening. So we want to be able to identify, what does conflict remind me of? This is my homework for you. What's your history with conflict? What situations have you been through where conflict wasn't mended, where it just ruptured and let the whole field be open and uncomfortable and it never quite landed? Where did conflict become harm for you? Or where did it feel like it was going to be? And your body just stayed in that association that conflict means something bad will happen. I spent my whole life avoiding conflict. And then when I started tending to my capacity for it based on overcoupling work, or rather uncoupling work, I started realizing that conflict was incredible fertilizer for intimacy. That conflict is just when two people collide in a disagreement, in a rupture, in the chaos even of confusion and fear that you won't be liked or that you thought you knew someone better than you did. And in that disoriented conflict is the potential for depth and intimacy and connection. And when repair happens out of conflict, we settle into a trust with another individual and into a greater capacity in the relationship to move through and navigate difficulties with greater clarity and kindness and ease. So I ask you to identify not just your fawning response, which I taught you in this video, but your relationship to conflict. What is your history, your family's history, even your ancestors' history with conflict that makes your body believe that if anyone dislikes you or disagrees with you, something bad will happen? As long as you have a traumatic or negative overcoupling with conflict, your body will most likely live in the fawning response so you can avoid it. Fawning helps you successfully avoid conflict because you're reflexively agreeing with everyone around you. So conflict just can happen. And that's the purpose of the fawning strategy, to keep the other party happy with you, to secure your attachment with the other party. This is what Gabor Mate means when he says, we will choose attachment over authenticity. When authenticity means you might lose someone, you'll bypass that and perform to win their admiration and love so you can have a sense of secure attachment. But it's only a sense. I used to think these were my friendships and these were deep, secure friendships, but they're not. When your relationships hinge on your fawning response, when they depend on reflexive agreeing and people pleasing and the avoidance of discomfort, that is the most insecure relationship one can imagine. But when your relationship has the depth and the history and the ability to have conflict, disagreement, disruption, even fights, and you can emerge from them with greater understanding and love and softness with the other. That's a true secure attachment, because you have learned that you can experience quite a lot and still settle in a sense of love and safety with the other. Safety for me is not about avoiding conflict. Safety is about knowing I have what it takes in me to navigate it. So take this information, practice it, play with it, notice it, and bring all your ideas, your questions, and your input in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. Thank you for watching today's episode. Please like and subscribe if you found it useful, and let me know in the comments what you want me to cover next.